David, it's kind of a miracle that we were even able to pull off an episode this week because my lovely paramour decided to get sick on, I don't know what it was, Saturday or Sunday, and all week she's like, why don't you give me a kiss? Like, she thinks it's funny to try to, like, make me sick. And I'm like, no, I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get sick. Sure enough, yesterday, I wake up, got that little, like, pain in the back of the throat, a little bit of nasal drip back there, and I'm like, oh, here it comes.
Yeah, it's funny how they do that. I slept on the couch all last week with my sickness when I was down with the sickness.
Right, because you're considerate.
Because and then she wouldn't, kiss me goodbye, or she maintained her distance. But, when somebody else has sickness, she's like, you're not going to get sick. Your immune system's fine. Yeah. So, it's almost like they want you. And they want you to get sick right along with them, but they don't want you to be happy without them. That's why when they see you just sitting there watching football, enjoying yourself with no qualms whatsoever, just enjoying they instinctively have to take it from you.
I woke up this morning and I wasn't any worse than yesterday, but I wasn't any better. And I'm like, we got an episode to do tonight. And so I'm either going to kill myself or cure myself. Pumped some, let's see, what did I take this morning? I took some elderberry gummies.
Good.
I took some Sudafed. I took some Dayquil.
All together, I hope.
Yes. I took some Emergen-C. And I took, and I took some vitamin D. And
I bet you did.
There was something else I did. Oh, just my normal every morning thing, some apple cider vinegar. I took all that at probably 8:30, and I had a bit of an out-of-body experience at about 10. I see why these meth heads do it.
You are the poster child of, like, the 5th grade high. Like, guys, did you know that if you drink Listerine like 3 times, you start to feel funny? Like, I got it, dude.
That's good, because I'm a cheap, I would say cheap drunk, but I'm a cheap intoxicant.
Yeah, you are.
Orator. And,
so you're not going to use Grandma's method?
No,
you're not going to use Grandma's You son of a bitch.
No. Actually, I considered last night putting onions in my socks, but I just went with the old-fashioned vapor rub. So.
Who started that? Tonight! Sorry. I might have just clipped. The audio guy's losing his fucking shit over there. Anyway. we got an Epstein for you. We got the DOJ doctor's evidence. I thought that was the Attorney General that did that.
A little bit of both. He works in the DOJ, David.
Anywho, Culture Corner. Started from the bottom, now the Libertarians are here. I think that was originally what Drake was going to do, but then he was like, it's too hard to get it, so I'm just going to go we.
Yeah.
But that's what he meant, though, by the we.
We should have been his ghostwriter instead of whoever it is.
Yeah, we're so much better at music than Drake.
Exactly.
Duh.
David, are we ready to tell the people at how shitty their government is? But more importantly, white pill moment seems to be that the rest of the masses are waking up to how shitty they are and are, starting to look elsewhere for quote-unquote leadership.
To quote Happy Gilmore, someone's closer.
With that being said, should we jump in?
Yes.
Let's do it. Welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 193, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/193. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. And you can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. David, this week's Epstein segment is the government is doctoring evidence. Shocker. As most of you may recall, in August of, I think it was 2022, the FBI raided Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate here in sunny Florida and found several, I want to say it was, I don't even remember the number. I think they said hundreds or maybe 100.
I thought it was 115.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Documents that were classified top secret or in some form of classification that were not supposed to be in civilian hands. And at the time, the big debate was, well, he was president, so as president, you get access to those things, and as president, you can also choose whether to classify or declassify things. You can basically override anybody else, right? Because you are the head of the executive branch, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, et cetera, et cetera. And so if he chose to declassify these documents before he removed them, after leaving office, after the 2020 election, then no harm, no foul, right? And I think that's still a big part of the question today in the ongoing prosecution of him for having these documents in his personal possession at his Mar-a-Lago estate. But you won't be shocked to learn that all of the narrative that swirled around this entire case up until about a week ago when some bit of a bombshell dropped is that Trump clearly had top secret documents, and it was proven by the fact that they ran special pictures all over the cover of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and all the other mainstream media mouthpieces. Well, you might be shocked to learn that that image wasn't exactly as it appeared. If you were paying attention back in August 2022, or maybe you're seeing this picture for the first time, you're probably thinking, wow, that image looks pretty rough. I see, at least 5 yellow bordered pictures there that clearly say top secret across it in bold print to make sure that if you're reading this after the fact, after the documents are seized in the New York Times, we got to make sure that when you see that picture in that New York Times article, that you can clearly read that it says secret and top secret, because that looks really bad. And at the time that this all occurred, we had some rather interesting hyperbolic language from some of the mouthpieces. So just a few of them, and this is in an article that you're not going to see on any mainstream sources. This is written by a Julie Kelly on her personal blog. And she included some of the more, like I said, over-the-top statements about this picture. For example, from the Washington Post, we have, quote, "The question of whether Trump had classified material with him at his Mar-a-Lago resort has captured the public's attention. The photo, published by the government, appears to answer that question quite affirmatively." And then we had this statement from an ex-CIA officer who said, quote, "People's lives are truly at stake. Without being melodramatic," I'm going to then go on and be very melodramatic. Sorry, that was my own editorializing. He says, quote, "Anything that helps an adversary identify a human source means life and death." And then the New York Times had this to say about this picture and about the case in general. Quote, "It is standard practice for the FBI to take evidentiary pictures of materials recovered in a search to ensure that items are properly cataloged and accounted for." Just in case, you, critical reader, critical thinker, thought, should they really be publishing this, right on the cover of a mainstream publication? I'm not so sure. The New York Times was here to run cover for them. They go on, quote, "Files or documents that are not tossed out randomly, even though they might appear that way, they are usually splayed out so they can be separately identified by their markings." So that was, the narrative formation. And we talk on the podcast all the time about narrative formation. If the mainstream media exists for any purpose at all, it is to form narratives. If the evidence isn't good for the regime, they'll form some sort of narrative that diminishes it or entirely covers it up. Cite the Hunter Biden laptop story. If the evidence can be remotely characterized in a positive way for the regime, they will go above and beyond to, form a narrative that confirms that as much as possible. This is just the latest example.
It's not true, guys. Biden does wipe his own ass. Watch, we got a video from front to back. No, it's that weird juxtaposition. Like, how many times does this have to happen? Like, how many times does it have to be like, Cuomo just went on fucking, what's his name? Patrick Bet David? Patrick Bet-David. Just went on Patrick Bet-David's shit and just said, yeah, turns out ivermectin was good. We were given the information. It's like, no. You, dang, that's an inside joke for us. You did not report that it was good. Everyone else knew it was good because they actually, read about it. They didn't have somebody in their ear saying, no, it's a bad thing. No, it's a bad thing. You always say bad thing, bad thing, bad thing, bad thing. So, and then even at least he's kind of coming out and saying, again, we like to do this on the podcast, and I did find a way to fit it in. We told you so. Fuck you, we're right. It's just interesting that now all these things are coming out, that maybe the shots weren't so good. And then, there goes YouTube. Sorry. Maybe we should have been a little more hesitant to lock everything down. Maybe we should have done this. Maybe we should have done that. And it's like, well, we guys, we didn't know, so we shouldn't be held accountable for making mistakes. It's like, no. We didn't want to shut down the country. You did. So now you don't get to have a say in the next time that there's a panic, because now you've proven that you don't care about facts. You don't care about being calm and carrying on. You want to panic and grab as much control and shout down your neighbors as possible. This is just another example of why all those deplorables on the right are starting to say that they can't trust the left, and you guys think that they're the crazy ones.
Their solution is always the same. Less freedom for you, more spying on you, and more power collected to them. That's a recipe for disaster. So, back to this story here. So you might be saying, guys, I object. Okay? What did the government do? All you've told me is that the New York Times and other mainstream media pieces, misreported on this and it was inaccurate information. Well, you might be right as far as that goes, except for the fact that we have Jay Bratt, who is the lead DOJ prosecutor in this case, prosecuting Trump for these purported violations of secrecy, having secret documents that he's not supposed to have. He classified these documents as this. He said, quote, 13 boxes or containers contain documents with classification markings, and in all, over 100 unique documents with classification markings were seized. And this is the important part of his statement right here. Certain of the documents had colored cover sheets indicating their classification status. Now, based on that statement in this picture, it seems to me that in August of 2022, lead DOJ prosecutor Jay Bratt is trying to tell the American public, as well as any prospective judge in this criminal case, that these documents are what this picture purports them to be. These are markings of classified documents to indicate to you, the viewer, the reader of the New York Times article, or the judge going to eventually examine this evidence, that these are classified documents. The only problem with that is they weren't. The documents that you see here in this picture, marked top secret, were a staging. They didn't appear in those boxes. Those documents were placed for the purposes of this photo to, again, initially mislead the American people as to what exactly was contained in these documents that were seized from Mar-a-Lago, but eventually to ultimately even mislead the judge about what was in these boxes.
And again, if you don't think this is voter manipulation by the DOJ on the American people, then you're not paying attention. It's tyranny, pretty much. Yeah. But go ahead, Dane.
Exactly. And so, the government doing what government does, once their hand is caught, they, do some clever wordsmithing to, try to interject some plausible deniability in what they've done. And I just read for you what Bratt's statement was about these boxes, not indicating in any way, shape, or form that these classification markings came from the investigators themselves and not out of the boxes that they seized. That's what he said in 2022. But what does he say now? Now that through the discovery process of the criminal prosecution that is currently ongoing now, when the defense attorneys for Trump and two other defendants found out that these were not originally in the documents and that they were a staged, a staged event for both the public and for the judge, and he was called on it. What did his story change to? Well, Bratt says this now about the documents that are marked classified. He says, quote, "If the investigative team found a document with classification markings, it removed the document, segregated it, and replaced it with a placeholder sheet. The investigative team used classified cover sheets for that purpose." So he says, you see, folks, we didn't try to, mislead you with these documents in this picture. We weren't trying to make it appear worse than it really was. Those documents really do stand for classified documents that we can't take a picture of it and put it on the cover of, New York Times. So these were just placeholder sheets. Again, if that was the true purpose, why did it take the truth coming out in the discovery phase of the trial for you to say that, Jay Bratt? Why is it always that the government, who's supposed to be the subjective arbiter of truth and justice, and it doesn't have any political axe to grind one way or another, it's just trying to find the truth and bring it to the American people, who are supposed to be the rulers of this country, so that the American people can make informed decisions about their leaders. If that was the truly objective, impartial DOJ and FBI that we're told does exist, then your statement now would have been your statement in August of 2022. But it wasn't. And it never is. Because again, the empire is collapsing. The regime is panicked. It's a wounded animal backed into a corner, and it's lashing out.
You would expect a better answer out of a 5-year-old that stole some cookies. Like, oh no, we just mislabeled it. That's all that was. But they were all still there. Okay, but why didn't you say that when you were under oath, when you first handed this stuff in? And it took us having to discover that these things weren't there. Why didn't you just tell us that up front? Line? 1 second. Oh, because we one more time. It's all the way to Nancy Pelosi pushing the microphone away. It's all the way to DOJ. It's all the way.
Yeah. I mean, I would even take a step further and say, not only do they not care about you, they have open contempt for you.
Yeah, almost. It would almost seem that way, right?
Yeah, the Nancy Pelosi pushing the mic away is a classic example of that, when she's asked about insider trading. And right. She's like, no, I'm not answering that, and then just walks off. She has contempt for you because you're not even entitled to an explanation. This representative, it's literally in the name of her title. She is supposed to be there to represent the interests of her constituents, not to get rich off the public trough or off, kickbacks from her, corporate cronies who are funding her campaign. So she writes legislation to help them out, or insider trades on information based on the committees that she sits on in the House, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what she's there for. She's there to represent the interests of her constituents. And so
she's here to just get money. Mission complete.
And so the cue our unique Nancy Pelosi GIF on the back end, boys, if you have it ready to fire up. But what could possibly explain that type of behavior from somebody like Nancy Pelosi other than utter contempt?
Well,
she does not view her job as representing you. She views her job as she's entitled to it and is entitled to do anything with it she wants, up to and including selling out the country for her own personal benefit.
Well, you saw her on MSNBC. It's like, that's the safest playground for any Democrat to go and play ball on. Like, that's pretty much, they're gonna underhand toss it to you. All you have to do is make contact, and it's gonna go. And she's sitting there ranting and raving about how Trump, like, this president has created more jobs than any other president ever. Cites nothing. She just says it, and people go, uh-huh. And then most people were going, uh-huh. And then she goes, and then Trump lost the most jobs ever. So it's not even comparable. And then, like, even the anchor was like, I mean, I gotta say that was on COVID. That was COVID's fault. We did lock down, and he didn't want to lock down, but everybody else did. She goes, and if you want to be a Trump apologist, then that's fine. Like,
Yeah, it was
like
so.
lazy.
You know, the Epstein moment here is really it's legion, and we've talked about many of them before. You know, the most closely aligned analogy here is one thing we've covered before about the FBI getting caught after the fact, manufacturing or doctoring DNA evidence to obtain several hundred convictions in various cases all across the country, which I believe it was the Innocence Project who did a study over the course of like a 20-year period, and they looked at, you know, how many times the DNA evidence was either thrown out or in some other way doctored by the FBI just so they could get a conviction. And, you know, that goes under the radar unless you have a public interest nonprofit institution like the Innocence Project come along and do that investigation. And without it, you would have hundreds of people, and I'm probably sure it's many, many more than that in United States prisons that are there simply because prosecutors wanted to win and investigators were unscrupulous. And, you know, that's the most closely analogous here because it's talking about doctoring evidence. But, you know, sticking with, you know, the CIA or the FBI and stuff like that, we have, you know, situations where MK Ultra, where the overarching concept is government does something bad, lies to you at the time, and then decades or generations after it's all over, they'll quietly admit, yeah, you know, we probably did that. Oh yeah, we were kidnapping American citizens and testing mind control experiments on them without their permission. Or, you know, you have the FBI going after groups all over the country, all during, you know, the Vietnam War, you know, again, illegally spying on them, violating their Fourth Amendment rights, jailing some of them, killing some of them. The list goes on and on. The government is always doing what it wants, not even asking for forgiveness later, just kind of admitting to it. Never permission. Never permission in the alleged land of the free, home of the brave, that is a government of, by, and for the people. Never ask for permission in that scenario. It's funny how that works, but this is just the latest example of it.
What's the name of the one that they wanted to blow up a fake airliner full of, quote, American citizens to try to get us into a war with Cuba?
That was Operation Northwoods, I believe.
Yeah. And then
they wanted to blow up an airliner. Yeah. They wanted to blow up an airliner, and they wanted to attack both military and civilian targets as false flags, blaming it on Cuban revolutionaries so that we would go to war with Cuba. Yeah, and that one was approved by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, made it all the way to JFK's desk, and he's like, I don't think it's a good idea, boys.
What the fuck's wrong with you people? And then they're like, oh, you don't like our ideas, huh?
Yeah.
Have fun in Texas.